Assalamu alaikum. Assalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Today we will discuss one of the amazing chapters in the Quran called Ar Rahman. And we will explain what that means, but for now we go with the given translation as the most merciful or most gracious. This is a late Meccan chapter, Sura, which means it was revealed sometimes toward the end of Prophet's years in Mecca, before his migration to Medina. Due to its name and its beginning, which starts with Ar Rahman, the whole chapter discusses Allah's reflection and manifestation, tajalliat, in the universe. One of the uniqueness about this chapter is that as Allah reminds people of His favors, events, and phenomena, beginning with verse 13, it repeats verse 13 multiple times, which is, that verse is, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Which favors of your Lord will you deny? Even when it talks about hell, it repeats the verse again to emphasize that rejecting Allah's signs and revelations and having ingratitude toward Him will consequently result in hellfire. It then concludes with the final two destinations. And then, as the chapter started with His name, it ends with His name. So, the repeating of verse 13 31 times serves as a reminder of each individual favor or things mentioned before the question, which is not asking for information, but it serves as a repeated reminder and emphasis. An alternate explanation for the repeating verses has been given, which is related to Qur'an's audience at the time of chapter's revelation, which was close to migration time, and the idolaters were getting more and more stubborn in their rejection and their increased ridicule, opposition, and anger. When someone is so angry and frustrated, you might have to repeat something several times to them, which sounds several times to you and others, but to him, he may hear it only once. Another point about this repeating verse is that Rabbikuma in the verse addresses two creatures, the jinn and the insan, the mankind. As we know, jinn has free will like human and can be a disbeliever. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Ar Rahman, the most merciful or Lord of grace, verse 1. This is a surah which starts with Ar Rahman, with his name, and that is verse 1. The whole verse is in one word. But when you recite verse 1 and 2, it makes a sentence. Ar Rahman allama al-Qur'an, most gracious, has taught the Qur'an, verses 1 and 2. Now, that becomes a full sentence. Then why did Allah break it up into two verses? In English, if you break up a sentence, like Ahmad, then you say full stop, and then another sentence to say rides a bicycle, it would be incomplete sentence. You need to join the two to make a full sentence. So why does Allah assign Ar Rahman as one verse and finishes the sentence in the next verse? Because Allah wants you and I to think about just Ar Rahman. Focus on that one word, which is His name, before we think about Allama al-Qur'an. Reflect on Ar Rahman first before reflecting on Allama al-Qur'an. We would not have reflected deeply on Ar Rahman had both verses been combined. So it says Ar Rahman is an ayah by itself, so stop and think. So we need to stop and talk about it first before moving on to verse 2. You know, we use this word all the time in our prayers, several times a day. We say, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And then after we say, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Ar Rahmanir Rahim. But what does Ar Rahman really mean? Do we have an English equivalent word or translation for it? Ar Rahman, which is a name of Allah and His attribute in His essence, Dhat. Some commentators say that it is about His general rahmah or blanket rahmah toward anyone and anything. Another verse in Quran explains it. In Surah Al-A'raf, وَرَحْمَتِي وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. My rahmah, mercy, encompasses or extends to all things. Chapter 7, verse 156. And then, of course, its manifestation or reflections are shown in the verses to follow in Surah Al-Rahman, which we will discuss. So, Ar-Rahman comes from Rahmah, which has been translated as the most merciful or Lord of grace, to get as close as possible to the meaning. Well, it serves the purpose for anyone at least to get an idea and understand it. But this is a limited translation or meaning. Plus the fact, mercy sounds like you spare someone when you have to punish them, or when one makes a mistake and asks for your mercy. I was going to punish you, and now I show mercy and forgive you. Which means one is expecting a punishment, and you show them mercy. In other words, in English translation of this verse, every time we see the word Ar Rahman translated as merciful, we think of punishment. But the word Rahmah has nothing to do with punishment and has to do with complete care. Someone who has Rahmah toward you is the one with what we call Riqqa or tenderness, with compassion toward you. He wants to be soft and easy on you. He understands you should be handled with care. Ar Rahman goes beyond the word mercy. Another meaning has been mentioned as well, which is intrinsic meaning. When we look at the root word that is rahim, it comes from rahim, which means the mother's womb or stomach. A whole new meaning comes to mind. What happens to a baby in mother's womb or stomach? What happens? The baby is nourished. Anything he needs is provided to him without him asking for it. Things that he's not even aware of is graciously provided for him. The mother's womb provides him with comfort, all his sustenance, and protects him from all elements. He is taken care of in every way. There's also a relationship between the mother and the baby. Does the baby know the mother? No. Does the mother know the baby? Yes, of course. She's aware of it and taking care of it in every way. But the child has no idea, no clue. The mother, the first thing does, she protects her stomach. She's extra cautious walking or sitting or eating, making sure she does not fall on things. That is a form of rahmah. And Allah is Ar Rahman. And out of His grace provides us with many, many things that we need, but do not even know about. And those we know about, take for granted. From our basic physical needs like oxygen, food, and water, to the whole ecosystem around us, things that we're not even aware of yet need. Because He is Ar Rahman. He is Lord of grace. Ar Rahman means Allah loves you, cares for you, understand you are delicate, so He will take care of you in every way. Another thing, and that is Ar Rahman is what is called Sigatul Mubalagha, which means something that is excessive and unusual. Like when you say, for example, when you say Qadhib, Qadhib means the one, it comes from the word Qadhab. Qadhib means the one who is angry. But when you say Qadban, means extreme anger. Any angrier, this person will explode. Allah says Ar Rahman, that means you cannot be more merciful, more gracious, compassionate to nth degree, beyond imagination. And another thing yet about Ar Rahman is that it is happening right now. It is one thing to say Allah cares, Allah loves. It is another thing to say Allah loves me right now. He cares for me right now. He provides for me right now. What does that mean? Well, everyone has problems. Family problems, children problems, spouse problems, parent problems, boss problems, co-worker problems, economic problems, government problems, immigration problems. We all have problems that we constantly think about. Yet, we do not think about Ar Rahman often enough. When I complain about my allergies, I do not think that I still have a healthy nose through which I can still breathe. How many other respiratory problems Allah has saved me from? I have no idea. When a child is born, how many things could go wrong? When you fly on a plane across the ocean, how many things could go wrong? You feel a little turbulence, your taqwa goes up. The plane drops in altitude, your iman goes up, subhanallah. Or even when you're driving on the street, how many things could go wrong then? Whether you're flying or driving or sailing, you get to your destination safe and sound only by Ar Rahman, because He cares. Sometimes we complain, Allah does not care about me. Why do I have all these problems? This means you have not thought about Ar Rahman enough. His care is already there. His care is already there. For those of us who have children, we complain about their grades or perhaps not paying attention. We never consider their health, the fact they are able to go to school and learn. If you ask a parent, he can give you a list of complaints. Oh, my kid does not do his homework. He's lazy. He watches TV, video games, a whole laundry list. But you know what? If you ever talk to a pair of parents, the parents who lost a child, they will never say, oh, he never did his homework. He was always late to school. He did not get A's. They say, my child was perfect. He was so perfect. He was the best. They only remember the good things. Why is that? A month earlier you were complaining. That is our nature. We do not appreciate the thing we have until it is all gone. Right now, we're not thinking Ar Rahman. We don't appreciate His grace, His bounty, by protecting our children, by taking care of our family and community. So, we need to stop and think about Ar Rahman every day, and not just during our prayers. Allah is taking care of you, my friend. Otherwise, it could be much worse. Unfortunately, when non-Muslims talk about Quran, they think it is all about punishment, hellfire, and an angry God. And it is more unfortunate that even some Muslims talk about Quran. They say, Quran says everything is haram, forbidden. Quran says everything is about hellfire. Quran says we're not good enough, etc., etc., etc. You must understand Quran is a product of God's love and care. If you want to know about Allah's love and care, you need to study the Quran properly. And you will see. Once you do that, learn about Allah through Quran, it will move you to tears. If you really want to understand what Ar Rahman really means, you must become a student of Quran. By the way, as we mentioned, the Surah chapter starts with Allah's name and ends with Allah's name. And since it is related to verse 1, we can just combine it with verse 1 and talk about the last verse here before we go to verse 2. So the last verse, verse 78 in Surah Ar Rahman says, تَبَارَكَ اسْمُ رَبِّكَ ذِي الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ. Blessed is the name of your Lord, full of majesty, bounty, and honor. So in the last verse of Surah Ar Rahman says, the name of your Lord, your Rabb, is blessed with all his majesty, full of jalal, his glory that cannot be given to anyone else, and his bounty. The name of Allah is blessed or full of barakah. So, we have to understand something about the word barakah or blessing. Note the surah started with his name, Ar Rahman, and ends with something about the first verse, which is his name, telling us that this name that we begin the surah with, Ar Rahman, is full of barakah. Note also that Allah himself is full of barakah. But here, he's not talking about himself, but his name being full of barakah. تَبَارَكَ اسْمُ رَبِّكَ. Now, we have to see what barakah means. In Arabic, they say al-barakah means an-numu wa ziyada, means growth, progress, and increase. فوق توقع, beyond expectation. If you plant a seed in the ground, you expect one plant or tree to come out of it. But if you see multiple, that is barakah. That is beyond expectation. Logic says I should see one tree or one plant, but barakah gives me a whole backyard full of plants or trees. Logic says for one small deed, I expect one small reward. But when I get a big reaction or multiple rewards or a big reward, that means the reward has barakah, blessing in it. Allah says when He gives barakah on something, it increases and it stays that way. Not like the world's economy that goes up and down. His name, His barakah, has barakah in it. What does that mean to you and I? That means when we do something in Allah's name, like Ar Rahman, and we mentioned His name, calling on the blessing of His name, then whatever we do will produce good, but it will produce good more than expected, and it will continue to grow. You know, because of this ayah, every Muslim is supposed to be an optimist. We can never be pessimists. Whatever you do may end up directly or indirectly fruitful in many ways beyond what you could see, beyond your imagination. You give a good advice to someone, and that person will use that advice in educating thousands of people, impacting their lives. That is a barakah or blessing in your advice with such astronomical results. Logic and mathematics do not make sense here. The numbers increase when unexpected. You don't know that one child you educated and taught the Quran's alphabet becomes the greatest scholar of our time or some time in the future. Through him, thousands of people take Shahada because of his da'wah, invitation to Islam. And you started him in his journey. The takeaway here is don't underestimate the value of the good things that you do. That is up to Allah. And when He puts His barakah on something, it will come beyond your imagination and expectation. من حيث لا يحتسب, as Quran says, from where you never expected. Now, back to the beginning. We talked about verse 1. Now we continue, and the last verse, of course. Now we continue with verse 2, which again finishes the sentence that started the verse 1. Ar Rahman allama al-Quran. And the next one, خلق الإنسان. Most gracious, it is He who has taught the Quran. He has created man. Verses 1 through 3. The term allama in allama al-Quran, which is a form of taf'il, means it was taught over a long period. Its knowledge was gained over a long period. That means there's no rush in learning the entire Quran overnight. Taking your time, learn it little by little, but continuously and understand it. In other words, don't give up and do it continuously and understand what you are reading. The messenger of God, who was the best student of Quran in the history, he is also the best teacher of the Quran. As a student, Allah taught him Quran in a span of 23 years. So the message is, don't feel intimidated. Oh, I don't know all the Quran, I don't know the tafsir or Arabic. That's okay. That is not the point. The point is you start somewhere. Start learning a little bit at a time. And no, it does not have to be just the short chapters at the end. It could be a few verses of a long chapter, just a few verses. Then start memorizing it so you can recite in your prayers. It becomes a reminder for you in your prayers, since you learn the meaning first. I'm telling you, when you have a daily relationship with the Quran, it will change you, especially the young audience. It will change the way you live, the friends you keep company, what you do with your time, how you deal with people. It will give you a vision. We need young Muslims to be the people of vision. Vision to change the society for better. We don't want to be people of video games, movies, and sleep, because then there will be other things that will follow. And before you know it, half of your life is wasted. These are not problems of non-Muslims. No, these are problems of Muslim youth today that don't seem to have a purpose in life. Why is that? Because we are disconnected from the book that gives us purpose. We need to reconnect. And this is an obligation for each one of us, that we have This is an obligation that we have toward the Muslim community. This book is inviting even the hateful people, the stubborn people, as it starts with Ar Rahman, the most merciful to everyone. It didn't say to a specific group. Ar Rahman, the most merciful to everyone. Those who know Quran should do more, teach more. And those of youth who are concerned about others, they should try to share the Quran with other youth, with other people. You know, there's a difference between a da'i and an alim or faqih, between a person who invites to Islam and a scholar. You don't have to be a scholar to share the message of Islam and Quran with others. Yes, there are verses of Quran that are complicated. And I'm not asking you to give a lecture on inheritance law tomorrow. But what is complicated about إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ? Sharing a simple verse or two with a friend. You can say something nice about Allah and His Messenger through verses of Quran. You can make Quran a means of reminder. That is what it really is supposed to be. This is Allama al-Quran. First of all, take your time in learning it. Second point, some of you perhaps graduated from a university, some of you still in the university or college. You know how proud you become when you graduate. You may hate it now while you're in school, but you know how proud you will be when you graduate and get that degree. You frame it and hang it on the wall. You're proud of it that you graduated from so-and-so university, and you should be. You go to graduation ceremony, people congratulate you, etc., etc. It gives you a sense of accomplishment, a sense of prestige. That is why you're honored in the graduation ceremony. When Allah says He taught the Quran, Allama al-Quran, He taught the Quran, who is the teacher? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If He is the teacher, what does that make you and I? His students. How cool is that? How honored you and I are that our teacher is Allah. Our teacher is Allah. He's teaching us through His book. You see, He did not even say علم الناس القرآن or علمكم القرآن or علم نبيه القرآن. He taught people or taught you or taught His messenger the Quran. He said علم القرآن. He taught Quran. That's it. He did not limit it to anyone or any group. Who did He teach to? To anyone who wants to learn it. It is an open invitation to everyone. Allah did not close that door. If you are 50 years old and you don't know how to read Quran, it's okay. Start now. Don't be ashamed or hesitant. No matter how terrible you may be, let's say, in math or English, science, history, but when you say, I want to learn Quran, asking Ar Rahman, Allah will open doors for you. Go and ask people who can teach you. Maybe Allah sees something more valuable in you than even a person who might know how to read the Quran. Maybe He wants you to achieve a higher goal through learning it. At the same time, teachers should be open and inviting with open arms to them so they feel comfortable. We have to understand these are people, some may be professional with higher education, that after all these years, they are humble enough in front of Allah to come forward and acknowledge that they want to learn, and we should help them. From the, ulama, the scholars, all the way down to the students, the youth, it is the job of all of us to make the deen inviting to anyone else. Anyone else. Allah did not close the invitation to even the most stubborn and harshest disbelievers. How can we then close it to fellow Muslims who may have been away from the message of La ilaha illallah? No hateful looks to someone who does not pray, to a sister who does not wear a hijab. Perhaps no one taught them. He does not know how to pray, or she does not know why she should wear a hijab, because no one explained it to them. Maybe she asked. Her parents did not know how to answer it. It is a fair question. It deserves an answer. Maybe if someone talked to him or talked to her and explained why in a dignified way, perhaps he or she changes her mind or his mind. You don't know. So we have to have this kind and inviting attitude and concern. Wallahi, this is the sunnah, tradition of our Prophet, peace be upon him, to teach the Quran with love, even to those who hate. Now, back to the surah. خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانِ, He created the mankind, verse 3. You know the term insan comes from two different root words. One is from nasya, means human beings are forgetful. Or it could come from uns, meaning very loving. You see, snakes are not very loving. Tigers are not very loving. Some other animals have some love, but not like human beings. Human beings can be very loving. We can show love to other humans, to strangers, and even to animals. We have that ability, we have uns in us. So there is the two meanings within the word insan or mankind. One is being forgetful, and the other being capable of loving. Allah chose the message of Quran perfectly for those who are forgetful. What do those who are forgetful need? A reminder. One of the implicit names of Quran is reminder. إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا ذِكْرٌ لِلْعَالَمِينَ. It is not but a reminder to the people of the world. Chapter 12, verse 104. So it says, I taught the Quran because you are insan. You are forgetful. You keep forgetting. So I keep reminding you over and over. That is why I sent down this reminder, subhanallah. The second one, the second meaning, we said it comes from uns, love. You are a creature capable of loving and capable of receiving love, needing love. If you are looking for love and you have a hole in your heart, this revelation of Allah will fill that hole, heal your heart. This word is healing for the sick heart. His love is all-encompassing and shows in His words. His word is the highest, as the Quran tells us. Yet the highest word is sent down to whom? To you and I. That is what you call a gift. Now, a question before we go to verse 4. Why does the surah puts teaching of the Quran even before the creation of mankind, which comes in verse 3? You know, other places in Quran, like Surah Al-Shu'ara, about Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him, who says, الَّذِي خَلَقَنِي فَهُوَ يَهْدِينِي. It is He who created me, then guided me. So creation comes before guidance. Chapter 26, verse 78. Or in Surah Al-A'la, سَبِّحِ اسْمَ رَبِّكَ الْأَعْلَى, the name of you, glorify the name of your Lord, the Most High. الَّذِي خَلَقَ فَسَوَّى, He who created and further given order and proportion. وَالَّذِي غَدَّرَ فَهَدَى, He who destined then gave guidance. Chapter 87, verse 1 through 3. In both chapters, creation of mankind is mentioned first, then comes the guidance and teaching. So why is it that in Surah Ar Rahman, teaching Quran becomes, comes before the creation of man? It did not say, Ar Rahman khalaq al insan allama al Quran. It says, Ar Rahman allama al Quran khalaq al insan, which is unusual. Because Allah has to create first, then guide or teach. And then here the verse says that He's the greatest teacher, because the second verse says, Allama al-Quran. He has taught the Quran. And the surah mentions Quran as the most vivid reflection or manifestation, tajalliat. So back to the question, two-part answer. Number one, the reason this verse comes before the creation of man, verse 3, is to emphasize that it is the favor of guidance, ni'mah of guidance, that guarantees everlasting success and salvation for the human. And it is more important than the creation of man itself. As if the man was created, if the man was created and deprived from guidance, he might as well wish that he was not created. As we see this wish coming in Quran from the kafir, the disbeliever, when they say, or he says, وَيَقُولُ الْكَافِرُ يَا لَيْتَنِي كُنْتُ تُرَابًا. And the disbeliever will say, well to me, would that I were dust. They wish, or he wishes that, he says that I wish I was dust, or I was never created. Chapter 78, verse 40. By the way, Quran often mentions things in order of importance, not in an order of time or history. This is the natural way of a book that is supposed to be for guidance. What we are learning today, that despite of all the accusation and the stubborn attitude the idolaters had, Quran came down as an act of mercy and care from Allah, Ar Rahman, the most gracious. So that was the answer number one to the question. Number two, who did God teach first? There is no mention of the prophet here. If that was the case, the verse would have said, Ar Rahman anzala ilayka al-Quran. Ar Rahman, we sent down Quran to you, O Muhammad. But it did not say that. Therefore, the teaching of Quran is extended to whoever is seeking Quranic education or Quranic guidance. In reality, it says Quran was sent down through the Prophet, but its understanding and comprehension is for general public, for everyone. So you understand with the context that's being presented, that is why teaching of Quran by Allah comes first before the creation, because of those two reasons that we just mentioned. Then it continues, خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانَ عَلَّمَهُ الْبَيَانَ. He has created man, he has taught him speech, which also implies intelligence, verses 3 and 4. The favor of creation comes before teaching speech. Of course, some people are born without the gift of speech, but will not be deprived of gift of guidance, as indicated earlier. Yes, they could be people without ability to talk, but they could have guidance, which comes first. Generally speaking, speech also indicates a sign of intelligence. Of course, every tribe and nation might have their own language and dialect, but here God attributes the ability to communicate and express, make expression given to us by Him, taught by Him as a favor, which is an ability other creatures don't have. He also, attributes teaching us and giving us the ability to write. But He attributes that to Himself as well, that He is the one that taught us. الَّذِي عَلَّمَ بِالْقَلَمِ, He who taught us the use of the pen. Chapter 96, verse 4. We move on to the next verse. الشَّمْسُ وَالْقَمَرُ بِحُسْبَانٍ. The sun and the moon follow precise, computed courses. Verse 5. The sun is mentioned first here and in other verses in Quran because it has a bigger impact on human life. You could say both sun and the moon move in their own orbit, the husban, in a precise and punctual way. No slacking, no delaying. And as a result, we have orderly days and nights, change of season, and so forth, all computed and designed for man's benefit and interest. In Surah Yunus, and many other verses, of course, we have, for example, it says, "It is He who made the sun to be shining and bright, and the moon to be light of beauty, and measured out stages for her, that you might know the number of years and the count of time." Chapter 10, verse 6. وَالنَّجْمُ وَالشَّجَرُ يَسْجُدَانِ. The stars and the trees prostrate to Him. After the sun and the moon, with their precise and calculated movements, verse 6 talks about the numerous stars and comes back down on earth. The trees are all prostrating in their own way. Both the stars and trees have precise movements. Plus, they have beginning and the end in common. By prostration, it means they follow and obey Allah's takwini, or formative natural laws. And they do what they're supposed to do. In Surah An-Nahl, it further explains this, says, وَلِلَّهِ يَسْجُدُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ مِنْ دَابَّةٍ وَالْمَلَائِكَةُ وَهُمْ لَا يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ. And to Allah prostrate everything in the heavens and on earth, whether moving, living creatures, or the angels, and none are arrogant before their Lord. Chapter 16, verse 49. وَالسَّمَاءُ رَفَعَهَا وَوَضَعَ الْمِيزَانَ. He raised the heavens on high and set the measure. According to commentators, by al-mizan, Quran is not talking about a scale that we weigh things with. It is more about the balance and justice. It says Allah established the heavens, earth included, and then set His just laws in operation in heavens and on earth. And then in the next verse says, Allah tatqaw fil mizan, in order that you may not transgress, exceed the due measure. Verse 8. Means Allah created heavens and the earth and His laws in operation with a measure, with a balance. So there is order. and it's just, and it's precise. And he expects humans to learn from these laws to keep and implement balance and justice in their lives and avoid transgression. And continues in the next verse, says, وَأَقِيمُوا الْوَزْنَ بِالْقِسْطِ وَلَا تُخْسِرُوا الْمِيزَانَ. And establish weight with justice and do not fall short in the balance, in verse 9. This means, avoid weighing short and deceiving people in transactions and social interactions. That is, be just in all your interactions with people, whether it's a material sale or a social aspect. The surah then gets into man's life on earth and all the bounty, ni'am, placed in it for him, which we will continue in the next session, inshallah. We ask Allah to give us a chance to get to know Him, His names and His attributes. We ask Allah to help us learn His book and help us implement it in our daily lives and enable us to teach it to others. We ask Allah to never let us disconnect from His book and never forget or deny His favors, His ni'am. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal asri innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilus salihat wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. Wassalamu ala man ittaba'a al huda.